And here we are. It normally takes a few seconds. Anyway, so that's why I just talk. the the LinkedIn Live here. So welcome everybody for today's LinkedIn Live. I'm very excited to have Stefan, Andrew, and Stephen with me here today. They're coming from Evolution, a wonderful tool in the enterprise architecture space. We are partners. Evolution also sponsored the Lean Leader Summit this year. And we will get some insight into making our business smarter. So heading over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Carsten. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lean Leaders Live webinar. So today we talk a little bit about aligning the CRM and HR systems and the people with the enterprise architecture. And for sure, if you listen to the talks here by Andrew and Stephen, this gives you ideas to make your business strategy a bit smarter than maybe you have it today. Okay, so for the agenda today, as I said, we talk about aligning the CRM and HR for the seamlessly end-to-end processes, enhance a little bit customer and employee experience, make smarter data-driven decisions, to build a scalable and flexible system for sustainable growth, and of course, drive automation and innovation with EA and tools like Abacus. Before we go into this and to the introduction of my colleagues here, I would just introduce Evolution. So we are since more than 24 years in the market, and we see us and as well many other leaders in the like Gartners. They see us as the leading enterprise architecture solution. We have offices around the globe, from over headquartered in Australia to Singapore, UK, US, and as well soon as well in Munich, with thousands of Abacus users in more than 100 countries. So saying that, we support any kind of clients in all major industries, depending on, so it's absolutely industry independent, as you see, and with a complete toolbox where we supporting 100 and more frameworks, like the core ones which you may use, like Archimate, TOGAF, NIST, Bayern, what else, whatever you need, you will find it in our Abacus solution, and you can start right away with your enterprise architecture. What we do is, since over 20 years, we empower the architects and enterprises. And I like the statement here that your organization won't look the same in 6 months, and neither should your EA tool. This is what we go on, and we still develop our solution based on the feedback from our clients. So which gives you the full flexibility and configurability with data and diagram-driven enterprise architecture, as well to remain ahead of the curve. With our expertise and innovation, we will help our clients. And of course, with our worldwide service and support, whenever you have an issue, which you might have less with our solution, but you will reach someone on the phone or via email, and we are here to help you. So I will not go into deep to our solutions, because my colleague Andrew will explain a little bit more later. So saying this, I would think I can hand over to Andrew to introduce himself a little bit before we start with Stephen then.
Perfect. Thanks, Stefan. Morning, afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Luthwaite. I'm the pre-sales lead at Evolution. So as Stefan's outlined the agenda there, Stephen's actually going to go through some real-world use case of how something like enterprise architecture can help support strategic planning around CRM and HR consolidation. And then after that, I'll just touch a bit more on the product itself and a couple of other use cases as well of where we've deployed Abacus. With that, I'll hand over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to come and talk to you today a little bit about business architecture, CRM and HR. So I've got 20 odd years in the industry, multiple industries in fact, working as a Chief Digital Officer, Transformation, CTO, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and Business Architect. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about my experience in a particular area of CRM and how we can address the topic of technology and working closely with HR to drive transformation and change. So really then, the next slide, please, Andrew, would be around business architecture, the missing piece. Now, why do I say this is the missing piece? Well, I think over the years, what we've seen is very strong EA in many companies and a gap via the business architect, the person who helps bridge that gap between what we're talking on the technology side and how we translate that to the business. And in particular, I've worked very closely with HR. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail of what I actually mean when I talk about HR. So over the years, EA, from my experience, has been very focused on the technology, very much focused on the diagrams, very much focused on frameworks and design and processes and paperwork and everything else that's associated with enterprise architecture. Then the business architect, he heads out, or the enterprise architect heads out, goes to talk to the business. And all they see is work. All they see is, oh my God, on top of what I need to be doing is, creating these maps, creating more work for myself, trying to reach deadlines. And at the end of the day, they don't see anything coming out of it. Because we have a lot of HR people who don't understand the technology side of things. We have a lot of technology people who tend to avoid the people side of the change, right? So, the business architect then really is there to help the business understand, what are the business capabilities? What are the business processes that we have in place? How good and how bad they function? We're looking at information and data. How does that flow through the organization? We're looking at organizational structure, i.e. how we set up as an organization to deliver on our services or the products that we produce for our customers. And then we're talking about the alignment of the strategy. So what are the long-term business objectives of the organization? And how are the departments impacted by that, of course? And then, of course, stakeholders, whether it be the executive board or the team, etc. So what I'm talking about here then really is a business architect. A business architecture is there to facilitate organizational change and transformation. It's there to be the bridge between what the technology are talking about and what the business is talking about. We have multiple viewpoints. I've used this framework here to show the complexity of the topics that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis as a business architect. And if we're able to transform that language from a business side and a technology side and bring it together, i.e. bridging those gaps, it should drive us in the right direction. So really, enterprise architecture, business architecture looks at the business from all of those perspectives, addressing the risks and on all the challenges that go with that, the processes, etc., etc. Now, bearing in mind, when it comes to technology, I know enough CIOs who have a very, very good understanding of the people side of change. I also know enough HR managers and CHROs who also understand technology well enough these days that it's getting easier and easier and easier to address those misunderstandings and how we manage things. But ultimately, what we're trying to do then here is create the blueprint for the organization, looking at the various standpoints of that organization, and then trying to realign that Rubik's Cube as we had at the beginning so that everybody's fully aligned to move that transformation forward. So what I'm going to be doing now in my next few slides is just walk through a very high level case study around the implementation and upgrading of a CRM system that the company was using. And this is really looking at predominantly focused on Europe. It was a global project, but really focusing on the European countries that were involved in this. And the company had multiple CRM tools in place, whether it be a standalone solution, whether it be using Excel, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody had a tool of some description. And so this was leading to the ways of working not really aligning. right? People will be doing things in one country, different to another country, and there will be different challenges going with it. So let's go into that. Let's have a look. So one of the key.
I'm sorry, Steve, if because we are live, and for the ones, if you do not watch this as a rerun, but you have it as a live streaming, you are able to just comment in LinkedIn also and ask a question. So we will then get to those. If you see this later, live, not live, still feel free to ask questions. I know Stefan, Steve, Andrew, you're also monitoring this and get it. So then it will be a text comment reply, but feel free to ask questions.
Thanks for that. Yeah, great. Anytime. So the case study. So as we all know, any transformation, any change is very complex. And often when we're looking at the complexities of an organization, a lot of high costs, a lot of regulatory challenges out there, whether it be data privacy, GDPR, user adoption, the integration of disparate processes, or just varying local challenges that the employees have. So really, the case study was looking at, okay, we have a lot of costs to maintain these different systems. We have a lot of business practices that are different in the different countries. Teams will be using localized processes and localized tools and localized data. And interestingly enough, in this particular challenge, the customer journey, the customer experience approach was different as well. A lot of similarities. I wasn't saying it was completely broken, but it was really trying to understand, okay, what is the real challenge that we're trying to solve here? Yes, we have high costs. Yes, we have a lot of process change, process diversity. So how do we bring all that together to perform better, to meet the needs of the customer at the end of the day, right? So here we were talking about, what process do we have? What people do we have in the place? What capabilities do we have in the organization? And more importantly, for the end-to-end of the CRM system, what were the ultimate services going to be that we would be providing? So end-to-end, from sales right the way through to the actual services being provided, or after sales, after service sales, etc., etc. So what was the approach we took to fix this challenge? Well, most people would say, well, let's do a workshop. Well, we did do a workshop. And I think, from actually getting the full understanding of the actual problem that the company had, not only from a cost perspective, process perspective, from getting everybody into a room, it took 3 months. That was getting and collecting the first initial data. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, I got the slide there. Yeah, sorry. One back, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, going through through a workshop stage, thinking about who are the key stakeholders, what people do we need to have in the room, etc. So what we actually did was we brought the IT teams into place, we brought the sales and marketing teams into place, HR, because they were going to be helping us here with the transformation, and really understanding how do the services actually perform. So over 3 days, we were able to really drive a dedicated workshop, 30 odd people in the room, really focusing on how do we now ensure we have the right alignment in the whole of the organization to make sure that this particular tool or tools could be implemented. This also included value stream mapping, looking at the real processes, really understanding what the customer data was telling us, how fast to market or how fast the processes were being used, looking at data around customer satisfaction. And so the whole value stream analysis also included, access to data, what data was available, governance models that were in place, and how do we actually ensure we have global process owners in place and process accountables in place, so that there was a very, very clearly aligned structure in regards to those processes, mapping out the differences and thinking about how do we now start streamlining these processes and the business models to these processes, rather than saying we're just going to deploy a technology and then everyone's going to work to the process. We really went to the process level, team level, structured level to figure out how do we do this. And then, of course, the people in the task. This is why the role of HR played a huge role in this, because we're moving from one way of working to a new way of working, ultimately changing the culture of an organization, right? So this required the full alignment of the roles and responsibilities throughout the whole of the organization. really looking about the ownership and accountabilities, and how do we ensure that the future processes could be improved with the respective roles and responsibilities in place as well. And this transformation was actually led at the country level with a decentralized change management approach, with a centralized support to help those teams. And those change teams locally were involving IT, HR, and the sales and IT and marketing teams, where they drove the transformation themselves, right? This wasn't from a top-down centralized approach. Now, this has a lot of advantages because it means you can act faster, be a lot more agile in your approach rather than having a centralized organizational transformation team. But it does require the key support from all of the stakeholders involved in this. So what were the outcomes? I have a couple of metrics to show you here that what we will focus on: customer satisfaction, the process improvements, and costs. So what we identified here was for what was the current customer satisfaction position, and we made a 60% improvement. That meant through feedback and interviews, engagement surveys, NPS surveys. So that came after a year of this project, a 60% improvement. It also led to a 41% reduction in process waste, meaning we consolidated processes, leaned out the processes, ensured that we had the right responsibilities and the right accountability in place for ensuring that those processes were managed well, and continuous improvement at the end of the day. And ultimately for the organization, it meant a drop in 15% of costs, so roughly $1 million USD in cost avoidance from the consolidation and upgrading of specific tools. There are other soft factors involved in this. I won't go to all into detail, but there was a huge amount of employee engagement. So employee engagement surveys were conducted, and we could see that the new ways of working, the new tools, the new systems, and also the cross-border collaboration improved dramatically. Service teams were able to go across borders, and they were able to support different teams in different locations in a much flexible manner that they didn't have before, because it was all very close, and then we were opening up the different borders of the countries, so cross-border collaboration. And then improved data and analytics. That was one of the key things. So helping drive that data decision making. So having a good source of data, understanding the analytics, understanding what the data meant required training, training the respective people there as well. But ultimately, this led to those metrics being achieved. So with that in mind, business architecture is a great, wonderful job. It's something I really enjoy, being the center of the gravity between technology and the business side of things. I think what we need to remember is that without a business architect, without someone who speaks the language of IT and the language of the business, it becomes very, very challenging. And HR plays a very, very specific role in this, because it's all about the people. It's all about the change. It's not just about the technology. And the closer we can bring these teams together, and the better the bridges and the foundations for those bridges are, the quicker we will be able to implement new technologies going forward. So again, if architecture is just a blueprint and nothing happens, it just becomes a paper exercise. So my advice to everybody is think about how you want to align your HR, your business strategy with the technology strategy, ensuring that the CIOs of the companies and the CHROs on the company are at the same table at the same time. That would be my recommendation.
Oh, thank you very much, Stephen. Wow, impressive.
You're welcome.
Okay,
I'll maybe stop there, see if we've got any questions coming in at all before I maybe move on. Stefan, I don't know if we can see any.
No, so far no question, but I think it's a good reminder. So if you watch this live, just comment and we will answer it while we are live. If you watch this not live, then still comment and we're happy to answer it.
Perfect, thank you. So I just want to cover off a few other aspects, really, maybe focusing a bit more on enterprise architecture and the tool that we provide. And Stephen there's obviously gone through some incredible case study of how something like enterprise architecture and business architecture really kind of work hand in hand. And of course, you can see on the top here, one of the main things that we try to do as a solution provider is have some of this kind of business IT alignment. And there are many different metrics that we hopefully get out of that. So improving costs, reducing complexity, really making ourselves more efficient or productive from an organization perspective. And that's really what we're trying to do from a solution perspective. You'll also see in here, we've got this increased standardization. So I think that also goes hands in hand with Stephen's case study as well. So when we have organizations starting out from a business architecture perspective, quite often we're faced with the question of, well, are there standards we should follow? Are there reference models we should follow? And depending what industry you're in, you might want to leverage something like BIAN. So for a banking industry, you might want to leverage things like APQC, who have process classification frameworks, or things like BizBook, the Business Architecture Guild, has some really good reference models as well across different industries. So as a starter, I'd maybe just recommend taking a look at those. Of course, we support those out of the box, and that can then help strengthen some of the governance that you apply to your models and really just act as some kind of accelerator. Standard EA teams, maybe standard is the wrong word in this case, but you would have heard Stefan at the beginning talk about things like TOGAF and Archimate. And of course, they're going to be standards and frameworks, methodologies that you could leverage as well. I also just want to highlight how the tool that we're providing here really does span across different departments and different domains. So yes, business architecture is a critical part for what a lot of organizations use our tool for. That could be capability modeling, process modeling, business change, strategic roadmaps. But then also that feeds into other areas. So application portfolio management, reducing technical debt, helping understand risk and cybersecurity risks. There are many different use cases. And if anyone wants to dive into those in more detail, feel free to reach out and we can walk you through what that would actually look like and from a user perspective as well. Now, just from a time perspective, there's a couple of case studies I want to briefly mention. So CERN, a great case study, actually, we were recently at a Gartner event and they were speaking there, talking about their use of our tool and how it's really trying to provide a single source of truth for their data sets. So quite often, most organizations have these siloed data sets, and hopefully this is what a tool tries to maybe overuse word solve in this case. A tool, of course, isn't just a silver bullet for these situations, but it can certainly help organizations manage these siloed pieces of work. In reality, what that looks like is visual diagrams, multiple Excel spreadsheets, kind of a half implemented CMDB potentially, and all of these things have some data. It's very difficult to centralize and understand, well, we want to decommission the system. How does that impact the business? Or we have vulnerabilities in the system. How does that impact our governance and standards and auditing perspectives? So a single source of truth becomes incredibly important from that perspective. Asian Development Bank, another great case study here. Again, where with the banking institution trying to leverage things like buy-in, of course, is going to be really useful. And they have various kind of digital investments that they have, trying to future plan their organizations. And they really just wanted to understand their current state. So how can they reuse components, services, processes, and how can they use a tool like Abacus to help support them doing that? Finally, outside of maybe standard institutions or industries, we work very closely with educational industries or departments, let's say. And there's a few good case studies that we have here. We're obviously STEM from University of Technology Sydney, so of course we have a close relationship with a lot of universities globally. And this one actually leverages something like the HERM model, so the Higher Education Reference Model. So that's going to be a great way of actually introducing a standardized, effectively a capability map for an education institution. And that can help rationalize some processes you have, understand where the costs are being allocated. And very often universities, like maybe I'll pick on the fact that we're in London here, have shared resources as well. So they try to follow the trends of other universities and follow similar situations. So leveraging these standards becomes incredibly useful. And again, it's something that we can dive into a bit more detail on. If you wanted to reach out, we know Wilbert at the University of Edinburgh would be more than happy to speak to anyone really on the use case he's worked on. So if you want more information on that, of course, reach out. The final thing really just to mention, well, two key things really. This is just a quick example of visualization from Abacus. Often what we try to say is try to build dashboards that highlight the changes that you want to make. So for example, we've got a core HR capability here, supported by multiple different systems. And similar to Stephen's case study, how do we rationalize these? How do we align on specific applications? How do you reuse these components, both internally and globally? And building dashboards that allow you to pick on specific metrics, cost, satisfaction scores, and risk. They can really help leverage some of the decisions that you want to make. So it isn't just drawing diagrams for diagram's sake. It's how do we actually get the outcomes from those? And outcomes typically look like deliverables, metrics, or KPIs to help drive some of the decisions that you actually want to be making. Finally, I'll just reiterate the core use cases here. So we support what we classify as the 5 most common use cases and the next 30 most common. And that's really just trying to leverage the idea that we have a very flexible model, a very flexible tool and a services team that can really help implement enterprise architecture across many different industries. It's also worth pointing out that if you wanted not just our word on this, of course, feel free to reach out and speak to our customers, take a look at the digital summits that they've been part of and all these wonderful events that they've been part of. And obviously you have analyst reports as well, like Gartner and Forrester and Sparks matrices that can really help evaluate things maybe more objectively than our subjective approach that we think we've got the best tool on the market. With that, what I'll do is maybe just close with a Q&A. So we'll see if there are any questions that have come in. Carsten, Stefan, I don't know if you can see any coming in.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the great insights and also mentioning kind of like the events you're at. There is the Lean Leader Summit next year coming up on June 10th and 11th in Munich. You already can get your tickets now, sign up at it for it at leanleadersummit.com. It's something where you guys were a sponsor of this year, hopefully next year as well. I think that's planned. So it's something definitely worth to come and talk and learn, but also having those conversations. So when it comes to questions, I don't see any specific questions right now. So let me just here. Actually,
maybe I'll just
us.
mention again. I mean, the summit that we were at this year was incredible. By the way, I mean, some of the topics of conversation there. I mean, AI obviously is in most people's minds these days, but there were some really good insights there from people like the European Union about how AI has been developed. To see that at government level is quite interesting to see across any other industry then as well.
Definitely agree. And I think it's something where your session today also bridges kind of like the from business to architecture, and I think that's a key for transformations, and that's also what we always have for sessions at the Lean Leader Summit as well, to have like inspirational, transformational, and covering kind of like new topics, but also bridging the gap to kind of like your legacy IT that still is there.
Yeah.
So I do not see a question coming in, but maybe I. What is something that you see, because we talked about AI, where AI is coming in for enterprise architects and the HR, CRM, things like that? What do you see kind of like the AI part coming in there?
Stephen, I'll let you jump in on that first. Oh, you're just on mute.
Yeah. So I see multiple challenges there. I think as we begin to see a lot of implementations being done through in organizations, shadow technology, let's call it, people are using a lot of the technology themselves without a proper policy in place. And I think there needs to be a lot more effort put into place between the respective technology teams, HR and legal, in regards to, what are the policies, what is the good use, what makes sense for an organization to, use off the shelf, whether it be don't need to name any of the AI tools out there, but whatever they are those tools going to be compliant? Are they following specific country, specific regional policies such as the EU AI Act? And I think there's a lot that can be done between the different teams. There's a lot of excitement out there. A lot of people are using it, but more importantly, I think the organizations need to make decisions on how and who sets up those models for good use in organizations.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just add to that as well that we've seen customers using Abacus, of course, to try and model their AI landscapes. And unsurprisingly, it always comes back to something like cost. But the cost models for different AI implementations and how they can spiral on consumption models, and we've heard people try to talk about flat fees across multiple LLM models they want to use. It's confusing and complex. I don't think anyone's really has kind of seen the best answer for that yet. So I think as that develops over time, there might be some consistency. But the complicated cost models out there is obviously confusing as to how organizations should deploy these things as well.
Awesome, cool. I think we're actually also already at the time end here, so I haven't seen anybody typing yet any questions, but I'm sure there will be afterwards. I thank you so much for joining us today here on LinkedIn Live, and for everybody that's watching this or watching a recording. There is more on our Lean 42 Academy, but also on the Evolution website, where you can learn more about Evolution, EA, but also like how to make it work.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carsten. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Andrew.
Welcome. Thank you.
And yeah, thanks to everyone who joined us today for this live webinar.